go ahead and get started, inshallah. Bismillah, Hajj.
Okay, Habib, Dr. Habib is in today.
He isn't on yet. He said he was going to come a little later.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم بسم الله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله. Inshallah, I want to try to go into the lessons where Ustad Abdullah left off. But first, just ask everybody to make dua for Shaykh Ameen and his family, and that he give them, afia, well-being, good health, inshallah. And I wanted to go into the book, like I said, but first I want to go into the importance of these classes as sitting with Shaykh Ameen for a numerous amount of years. The importance of these classes is that we won't be fooled by Islam. We as people in this country have had many obstacles and things that we deal with tricks being played on us, tricks being played on Islam. Islam has many enemies who put things out there to throw us off track from getting close to Allah. And the importance of Sheikh Ameen, Dr. Dunya, Habib Rasul, instead of Abdullah, is that Sheikh Ameen always taught us that if you're going to have someone take instructions from someone, that make sure that they have the proper credentials. Nowadays you have sheikhs from the hot dog vending truck, from the supermarket of Arabs and different things like that, who have never had any formal Islamic education. Formal Islamic education is very important, as it was a Sheikh Ameen, getting it from Dr. Dunya, from myself, Dr. Habib, and instead of Abdullah Frank, from getting it from Sheikh Ameen, because he have the credentials to show that he put in his work to be able to teach. In a lot of cases, like a lot of us, we learn and practice our Islam. You might see somebody walk into the masjid, have a gray beard, look like he's knowledgeable, and he might pray a certain way, he might do a certain thing, the way he slam out, the way he does his prayers, but he had no formal education, but he looked like he knows. So what we do, we follow what we see him doing when it may be incorrect. So if you're going to take from somebody who knows. That's the importance of this class and these classes, is so that we could get formal Islamic education. Formal Islamic education is for being self-educated, like if you're just going to read books and not have an instructor. It's no comparison. You can't teach yourself. You can't instruct yourself. As we have the Quran, and then we have and talk about salat, where the Quran tells we have to make salat, but how do we know how to make salat? We needed the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to teach us how to make salat. So it's very important to hold on to these classes. Those who sit in classes and attend classes, and when this class, if this Sheikh Ameen start resuming classes, it's very important to get to the class to take directly from him. As, like I said, the Sahabas, they took directly from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Tabi'in took from the Sahabas, and the Tabi'in took from the Tabi'in who took from the Sahabas who took from the Prophet. So we make sure that we know what we're doing. The deen is simple, and it's easy, and it has a format which is correct. And that's taken from somebody who have their credentials. It's very important. I can't tell you the importance it is. As I look at my notes and think about what I want to talk about today for class and go over different things, I realize the notes would mean anything without saying what Shaykh Ameen. We must sit down and we must be in the company of those who can get us on the correct paths, because there's many ways. You can take a hadith and you can ask 10 people about this hadith, and you might get 10 different answers. And then you ask a scholar of hadith, and he give you an answer which is related to the hadith. So being in these classes and attending classes is of the utmost importance. Inshallah, where City Abdullah left off at was the next topic was doing previous prayers that you missed when the cause is from you and not from Allah. When you miss the fard prayer, you must do them in the order that you missed them. You must follow the same order of the prayer as Allah ordered to do them. Subh, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. If you have 2 days, weeks, months, or years of prayers that you miss, you have to pray them in the order that Allah said they should be prayed. The first point is to do the previous prayers very quickly. This is difficult for different people. This is different for different people. You must use your free time to make up your previous prayers. Someone might be able to do 3 days prayer in 1 day, and someone else may only be able to pray for 1 day. You must remember, however, that in the process of making up previous prayers, you must still get the necessary sleep, food, drink, and livelihood. Suppose you have not prayed Subh or Dhuhr of a previous prayer. Must you pray Subh first? No. However, you will be punished for not praying the prayer in the order that Allah ordered. The prayer will be valid, but you will be punished. And you will be punished because you must do the prayers in the orderly fact, in the order that was prescribed. Subh, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. Suppose that you have not prayed Subh or Dhuhr of a previous prayer. You must pray Subh first. Okay. So the previous prayers have no time except the time in which you say them. The time of a prayer finished after you say it. Islam does not ask you to repeat a prayer unless the time still exists. When you have a previous prayer to do and the present prayer is due, what should you do? When the previous prayer are more than 5, that you owe more than 5 prayers that you miss, they have to be prayed before the prayer which time is present. When the previous prayer are less than 5, they have a strong connection with the prayer that's present. So if, let's say, for instance, you miss 4 prayers, you need to make these 4 prayers before you make the prayer that's present, because they have a strong connection with the present prayers. Let me go on and read. Strong connection. Some scholars of the madhab differ on the number of 5 being little, less, little or much. They agree that 4 is little and 6 is much. Okay, Dr. Dunya followed the opinion of 5 as little, as missing previous prayers before the present one. So if you miss more than 5 prayers, then they're in connection with the prayer that's in, and you should try to get these in first. When the prayers are not little, then they have no connection with the prayer that's in. When the prayers are more than 5, then they're not connected to the prayer that's in now. When you have little previous prayers and present one and the present one, you have to pray the little previous prayers even if the time of the present one will pass. This includes Friday prayer as well. So let's say, for instance, is Asa, and you miss your prayers going back to yesterday's, after yesterday's Asa. That means that it's 5, and like I said, Dr. Dunya, he considered 5 as being less. If you remember little previous prayers, after you start the present prayer, it's all right. But what you should do if you're involved in the present prayer, if a person says the present prayer first on purpose, let's say you make that Salatu Asa, and then okay, if a person says the previous present prayers first, and he didn't say his previous prayers that was 5 or less, then he must say the little previous prayers and repeat that prayer that he's doing, because he has to do this in every obligatory, and he has to do this even if obligatory time of the present prayer is still remaining. Okay? For example, if the time of Asa finishes, you are not ordered to repeat it. Doing it again when it's time finished looks like nafus. And when it's time finishes, there is no nafus for that prayer. So it is a fard to put previous prayers in order, and obligatory to do the little previous prayers before the present prayers. If a person remembers while praying a fard prayer that he has to make up little previous prayers, he should cut his prayer. If a person is an imam or a single person praying and remembers he has little previous prayers to do, he should cut his prayer, and the ma'mun should cut their prayer also. The ma'mun is the person standing behind the imam. The ma'mun, in this case, does not have the right to pick one from among them to replace the imam, nor does he have the right to pray alone. In some cases, ma'mun has this right, but in this case, he does not. When a person, as an imam or a single, remembers while he is in the present prayer that he has little previous prayers that he missed, he should cut his prayers if he hasn't done one whole rakah of Al-Fatiha, surah, the second surah, the ruku, and the sujud. Question: suppose that a person has made ruku in the first rakah, but no sujud. What should he do? He should go out the prayer saying Assalamu alaikum. when you want to go out to prayer, when the prayer is valid, you should say Assalamu alaikum. When the prayer becomes invalid for some reason, it is not necessary to say as when you're passing wind. The prayer says salams in the first case because his prayer was valid up until the point he ended it. If a person completes a whole rak'ah with ruku and 2 sujuds, he should add another rak'ah with the intentions to make the prayer nafil. He should then give salams and Allah will accept his prayer. And the ma'mun, if a person is imam as being nafils, what the fiqh wants to do is prevent these persons from making a present prayer before making the small previous prayers. Therefore, when we say to him, add another rak'ah after making a whole rak'ah to make it nafil, we are keeping the order between previous prayers and the present prayers. It is obligatory to do little previous prayers before the present prayer. If you do the present prayer before the little previous prayers, knowingly, you will be punished on the day of judgment. You still have to repeat previous prayers after the little previous prayers. You still have to repeat the present prayer after the little previous prayers if the time is still existing. So if you owe prayers, and summing up what I just went over, if you owe prayers and they're less than 5 and the prayer comes in, you should do those prayers before you do the prayer that's present. I don't want to go too far and too fast. Anybody have any questions about any difficulties understanding what I just went over?
Yes, can I ask a question? In summary, then, if you owe less than 5 prayers, you should do them before the present prayer.
Yes.
And what was the other side of that coin? If you owe more than 5,
then you could do the present prayer and you can make up the prayers you missed after them.
Oh,
But if it's 5 or less, you should do those prayers, make those prayers up before the prayer that's in.
oh, shukran. I understand. Shukran. Thank
you. Okay. The ma'mun and the missed previous prayers. The ma'mun must cut their prayers when the imam cut his prayers after remembering he has to do little previous prayers. If this prayer is Dhuhr, for example, and the ma'mun has done Dhuhr at home and is now doing the congregational prayer, he must cut his prayer off. The ma'mun cut their prayer off, not because they did not pray Dhuhr or Asr, and in the case of the imam praying Maghrib and remembering he did not pray Dhuhr or Asr, but because the imam has cut his prayer. When you are not the ma'mun and you remember you did not pray Dhuhr and Asr and the imam and everyone else is in the congregation do not have any previous prayers, you are praying Maghrib, you should complete the prayer with the imam. You should not leave the imam. You should not complete the prayer behind the imam. You should complete the prayer behind the imam. After this, you must pray Dhuhr and Asr that you missed, then say the Maghrib again if the time is still existing. Why should you sit? Why should you stay with the imam? If you leave the imam to the prayer, to pray away from him, establishing another prayer, someone will say, this must be a bad time. Islam creates respect around the imam. The respect is so that people will trust what he says. If they have doubt about the imam, they will not follow or respect him. So it's saying that if you're already in the prayer and you're praying behind the imam, you should never leave the imam. Although you owe previous prayers, you should finish that prayer with that imam, go do your previous prayers that you missed, and then repeat the prayer that you did with the imam, because you owe previous prayers prior to praying with that imam. And the reason why you do it, because of the imam and inside the masjid, there's a certain respect that goes with the imam praying. People won't want to say, oh, he's not praying with that. He left the prayer with the imam. Maybe he made too many mistakes or anything. So to relieve doubt from people's mind, you should stay with the congregation. The Mahmud does not say the present prayer because it is more important than the little prayer, previous prayers. It is the opposite. He completes the prayer behind the imam because Islam would not allow him to leave the imam without salams. The people may not necessarily ask the person why he left the prayer alone. They may ask themselves and answer themselves. All the above is for a fard prayer. If the imam or a single person completes 2 rakas and has started on the 3rd rakah of Maghrib, he should complete the prayer as Maghrib. He should then pray Zohar and Asr, and if the time is still existing, he should repeat that Maghrib, as I said. If the imam or the single person has completed 3 rakas and the prayer has 4 rakas, he should complete the prayer. But if he has not completed the 3rd rakah, he should go back to the sitting position and a tashahhud and say salams and complete the 2 rakas as nafils. If it is the 2nd rakah of the surah, if it was the 2nd rakah of Subh or Juma, you should complete the prayer. Suppose that you have little previous prayers and start making nafils. The nafils in the case is more important than the fard. Fards are ordered to do until you die. But when the nafil when it is canceled, you are not ordered to do it again. Therefore, the nafil prayer is not easy to be canceled unless there is very important reason. Also, it is said that when you start the nafil, it becomes a fard. It is necessary for you to do little previous prayers before this nafil. If you do a nafil prayer purposely and intentionally while having previous prayers, you will be punished. It is a big sin. So when it comes with the order of making prayers, and you owe previous prayers, you should make nafils. You should do the previous prayers that you owe, because as the author said, it's necessary for you to do little previous prayers before doing this nafil. If you do a nafil prayer purposely, nafils are voluntary prayers. If you do this nafil prayer purposely and intentionally while having previous prayers, you will be punished. So if you know that you miss some of the fard salats and you still do nafils, it's a big sin. It's a tremendous sin. If there's anything that prevents you from doing the ruku, part of the light ruku, such as gas, which if you were to bow and bend would pass out, and you leave this ruku out, your prayer would be invalid because you missed that fact. If the passing of wind is due to sickness and comes every time you bend or bow, you should make the ruku or sujood, and the obligation prayer will be valid. Zuhr and Asr prayer as well as Maghrib and Isha prayer are said to share the time respectively. Zuhr and Asr shares an obligatory time before sunset, and Maghrib and Isha shares an obligatory time before dawn. If you are doing Asr prayers and remember that you did not pray Zuhr, Asr becomes invalid at the moment, because to do Zuhr prayer, to do Zuhr before Asr is fard and a condition of validity. Fard means that you do the Asr prayer before Zuhr, you will be punished. To say that to pray Zuhr before Asr is a condition of validity, means that to do Asr before Zuhr will make Asr invalid. The same holds for Maghrib and Isha. The order between Subh and Zuhr is fard, and if you do the opposite, you will be punished. But the prayers will not be invalid. There is no condition of validity in regards to Subh and Dhuhr, or between Asr and Maghrib. To do them in order is a fard, but not condition of validity, which means that being that Subh and Zuhr doesn't share a time, that your prayer will still be valid, but you still will be punished for not doing your prayers in order. Inshallah, we have any questions? What is required from you when the previous prayers are much is that you put them in order. If you do not put them in order, prayer will be valid, but you will be punished. So this is a case of you owing the more than 5, and that they have to be in order, such as Subh, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. But it doesn't invalidate your prayer if you do them out of order, but you will be punished for it because you didn't do them in order. But the prayers are still valid. Okay, after you do a previous missed prayer, its time has finished. Therefore, if you do one previous prayer of the many previous prayers out of order, you are not asked to do the previous prayer again, as it is the case with the present prayer and the little previous prayers. Because once you do the previous prayer, its time has finished. However, you will be punished for not putting them in order. Okay? You understand that, Frank? Frank?
Not completely, but I don't want to hold everybody up.
No, because that's how I could tell who's getting it.
Could you repeat the last section?
Okay. Now, what we're talking about is the person who owes more than 5 prayers. Okay, and that person who owes more than 5 prayers, they have an obligation to make those prayers, but they have no connection with the prayer that's in because it's more than 5 prayers. Now, but they must be done in order,
Right.
and for it to be accepted, for them to be valid. But if you do them out of order, they still will be valid, but there will be punishment with it. So if they're done in order, then there's no punishment for doing them. But if they're done out of order, they're accepted, but there's a punishment because you didn't do them in order.
I understand. Shukran.
F1. Zuhr and Asr prayer, as well as Maghrib and Isha prayer, are said to share in time respectively. Zuhr and Asr share in the obligatory time before sunset, and Maghrib and Isha share in the obligatory time before dawn. If you are doing Asr prayer and remember that you did not pray Zuhr, Asr becomes invalid at the moment because the Zuhr prayer before Asr is a fard. So that means if you can't pray Asr before you pray Thor. Fard means that to do Asr before Zohar, you'll be punished. To say the prayer Zohar before Asr is a condition of validity. Your prayers would be invalid if you mix them up and you say the one before the other because they share the time. And the same holds for Maghrib and Isha. The order between Sub and Thor is Fard, and if you do the opposition, you will be punished, but the prayer will not be invalid. There is no conditions of validity in regards to Sub and Thor or between Asa and Maghrib. To do them in order is a Fard, but not condition of validity. You got that, Frank?
I think so. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions in regard to that?
Actually, I do have a question.
Yes, Frank.
If I would be, if I would pray Asr and I'm in the middle of Asr and I realize I didn't pray the prayer before it, which is Zohr, would I stop that prayer and go back and pray Zohr and then pray Asr again?
Yeah, because why? Because
You have to be in order.
the prayer is not going to be valid. It's invalid.
Right.
It's not going to be accepted.
That's why I would have to pray it again because it's invalid the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Shukran.
That's one. The next topic is miss previous prayers continuously. What is required from you when the previous prayers are much is that you put them in order. If you do not put them in order, the prayer will be valid, but you will be punished. after you do previous prayers, previous missed prayers, its time has finished. Therefore, if you do one previous prayer of the many previous prayers out of order, you are not asked to do the previous prayer again, as it is the case with the present prayer. And the little previous prayers, because once you do the previous prayer, its time has finished. However, you will be punished for not putting them in order. When a nafil prayer is established, it becomes fard. So once you start out a nafil prayer about so they call it the sunnah prayer, but in the method of Imam Malik, we call them the nafil prayers. It becomes a fard once you start it, that you have to finish it. And that's why in the cases before, if we find ourselves that we miss previous prayers that are less than 5, and we started praying a fard prayer that was in, and realized that we should have been praying our previous prayers first, that if we done did at least one rakah of that prayer, we need to do another rakah, and it becomes a nafil for us. But it won't be that far because of a missed previous prayer of the lower ones. Okay? Good. Is there any more questions? But that's why I said in the beginning of the class, there's so many little details that we don't think to put emphasis on the importance of them, and we don't know, and a lot of people don't know, and we may ask the wrong person. So, like I said, as Shaykh Ameen always says, that if we're going to try to get help with matters of our religion, we should make sure that the people have the correct credentials to tell us about this information. I can't emphasize that enough. So when nafil prayers is established, like I said, it becomes a fard. If someone has started to do nafil prayers and remember, like he has missed some little previous prayers, what should he do? First, he should complete the whole rakah. If he has done a whole rakah from the nafil prayer, he has to complete it. This is irrespective of whether the time of the present prayer will remain or not. An example of this is if someone were to come into the mosque after they are done for Maghrib. Suppose he forgot that he hasn't prayed Maghrib and began to pray Nafils. If he remembers and has completed one rakah, he consider this the time of Maghrib. If he can finish the Nafil and reach Maghrib in its proper time, he can continue and finish the Nafil. Then the prayer of Maghrib, then he prays Maghrib. But if he finds that if he continues the Nafil and the time for Maghrib will finish, he should cut off the nafil. Therefore, the person should not cut off. He should cut the nafil. Therefore, the person should not cut the nafil unless these two conditions, and that is the time for Maghrib is about to leave. He has finished a whole rakah, and the time of the present prayer will be finished. So if he hasn't finished the whole rakah of the first rakah, he could cut it off because he's going to miss Maghrib totally, or the time of the present prayer will finish before the nafil. So we have to be careful in that case, inshallah. I'm going to stop here, inshallah. The next part looks a little, like Shaykh Ameen said, I don't want to get your mind on too much at one time. But at this time, I'm going to take questions if there's any. Majid, you're going to, if there's any questions?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
If it's not about the current lesson, but it was about the subject you and I were talking about earlier about the prayer times. So your advice is to always pray. If I have a two times that are different, I should always pray the later one.
Yes.
Okay. Shukran.
Because you can't pray before it's time.
Right.
But the later one, at least we know. And what I always do, I remember it was Shaykh Ameen, and they was in the masjid, it was during Ramadan, and someone called the Adhan before it's time, and they could look out and see that it clearly wasn't time by the sky for the prayer to be done. So, so even when you think it's time, especially for Ramadan doing fasting, you should give it a few extra minutes anyway, because you're not judging it by the time by the signs of the sky. You're judging the time by the prayer time by calendars, which could be off, or a person can be off. Inshallah.
Shukran.
Careful. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hajj Dawood.
Walaikum salam.
How's everything? I just wanted to because I wrote in my notes about what you said about owing the prayers. So I just put on a side note, make sure you don't fall behind by missing prayers that are presently due. So if you owe a prayer, you make the prayer that you owe before you make the next prayer. Example, Maghrib comes in and you didn't make Dhuhr and Asr. You make Dhuhr and Asr first before making Maghrib. If a large number of prayers are missed, which is one day's worth, then it's permissible to pray the prayer that's in. Then you make the previous prayers missed.
Yes.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Shukran, jazakallah khairan.
Man, what did you do in the case if you're in the masjid and you're praying with the imam, or the imam has started the prayer?
So you finish the prayer. you finish making
Realize, right?
you praying with the congregation, right? You don't stop.
Exactly.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan.
Ameen wa yet.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay. All right, inshallah. We're going to get ready to close this meeting. This has been a short one, but I don't want to go too much into it, into the next lesson. And it's going to be, Frank, in case you want to put it down for the next time we speak, to be when you forget a prayer, but you don't know what the prayer is. For example, like yesterday, you say to yourself, yesterday I did 4 prayers instead of 5, but I didn't remember which one I missed. I don't remember if it was Sub, Thor, or Asa, Sub, Thor, Asa, Maghrib, or Isha. So we're going to continue on there, inshallah. And like I asked everybody to make dua for Shaykh Ameen and his family for health and prosperity, and that maybe Allah keep them close to Him, inshallah. Ameen.
I've written that question down, and that's the start for the next class.
Okay.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. If that's it, I'm gonna close the class. Do we have anybody? Has anybody? I don't know if Dr. Habib is in here. Is anybody checking the chats and the YouTube to see if there's questions?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I did see a question, somebody asking about how Sheikh Ameen doing.
Okay, he's doing alhamdulillah, inshallah. But just Sheikh Ameen is getting older, and when we get this age, we always have problems. So just make dua for him that Allah gives him afia, well-being. If you ask Sheikh Ameen, he'll always say alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I do see one question in the YouTube.
Okay.
Let's see, but I just had it. No, I just lost it. I think that what they asked was, is participating in an Islamic lecture a good excuse for delaying Zuhr and praying it with Asr? They don't want to leave. They don't want to leave the lecture, out of respect. So they delay their prayer to pray together with Asr.
Which one is obligatory, the lecture or the prayer? Sheikh Ameen says that we build our life, we build our prayers around what's going on, but we should build what's going on around our prayers. And if they having a lecture, I would pray, and after the lectures, or because if they had the lecture straight through from the beginning of us to the end of us, and they didn't stop in time for prayer, you know what I'm saying? If it was an Islamic lecture, but if it's not an Islamic lecture, I would excuse myself, because the prayers, as it's an obligatory thing. There's no way we can get around that.
So Shay, can I add to that?
Sure.
So like we said, so Zor and Asher had they share time, the obligatory time, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't necessarily be sinful, or would it be sinful to, let's say, okay, like let's say here, we're on this class, and it's an hour long, and let's say 30 minutes ago, time for Zor comes in, but I'm waiting 30 minutes or an hour or so until class is over to go ahead and pray Zor. It's still before Asr's. It's still during the obligatory time, but I'm just delaying it. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know about combining, if you're traveling, the prayers. Your prayers will be valid, but to delay your prayers is simple. Like if we traveling, there's certain conditions which we can combine the prayers and bring the door up to the Asa time. But there's conditions for that.
Exactly.
I mean, your prayers will be valid, but there'll still be a punishment probably for taking it past the time of thought. Inshallah, any more questions? Okay. لا إله إلا الله وحده شريك له له الملك وله كل شيء قدير سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Inshallah, I'm gonna close the meeting. You want to give a small dua?
Inshallah, you can give that to you, inshallah.
We ask Allah to give us the benefits of these classes and to keep us going forward in seeking knowledge. The Prophet ﷺ would walk through the masjid. There would be many groups. There'd be groups reciting Quran. There'd be groups doing different things. But he would go to the group of people he would sit with the groups of the people who are seeking knowledge. So may Allah keep us all seeking knowledge in the best way and the best benefits. And that's from sitting in the presence of those teachers who have put in their work, who have the credentials to back them up. Ameen. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Ramadan Mubarak.
رمضان كريم.
Alaikum salam.